Okay, we are here for the third time in the takeover of the Oslo Desk. And once again, I'm Anthony Giannumis, and I get to interview the great and wonderful Man Mak, who is the leader of the Oslo Desk, the champion, and the reason why we get to do this sort of thing, which is really wonderful. Today, we're going to be talking about a couple of really personal and intimate things, but also trying to understand how your background and your experience relates to your worldview. So the first thing I want to start off with is you have a lovely daughter named Hazel. And so I want to understand a little bit more about your relationship with her and how that all started going back to your pregnancy and all the way through till now. So let's just start with that really personal and intimate question. What was it like being pregnant with your daughter, Hazel?
Oh, it was during a time where I don't know if I said it before, but when I found out I was pregnant, my mother, passed away at the same time. So I was dealing with life and death, type of issues. But when I had my daughter, it was, there was no doubt in my mind that I didn't want to have her. It was, I mean, it was a little scary because I knew like my mother passed away, but at the same time, because of me having to take care of my mom and having to physically and mentally be strong, I felt like having my daughter wouldn't be an issue at all. Um, but it was just the idea of being a mom, being uh, I don't know, it's a really beautiful feeling, but it's also quite nerve wracking at the same time because I'm often thinking, okay, I'm gonna have a baby. I need to take care of my health. Once she's born, can I really do it? It's all in my head, because
Yeah.
obviously in the beginning you're kind of like going, yeah, I can do this, I can do this. And then like sometime at the back of your mind is like, yeah, maybe there's some stuff I still need to work on.
Yeah, sure.
So,
Yeah.
but no, it was just uh, it gave me I guess like I'm trying to be very careful because like my mother put her children at the center of her life and
Mm.
universe, and that kind of pulled her away from developing herself and her career and all sorts. So but I do have to say like my daughter became really the center of my world,
Mm.
and she made me think about things that I haven't thought about. And it's just refreshing. It was just this such a innocent little being growing inside of me, and I want to take care of her. I want to, love her. I wanted her to have, the best, really. So,
And I want to pick up on some of the kind of the narratives that you were just mentioning here. There's in popular culture in the media, we get all of this kind of mothers should be like serene and gentle, and they should put their children at the focus of their world and all these sort of things. And for women who maybe don't have that same experience, or for one reason or another might not fit into that very traditional model of what a mother is or is supposed to be, it comes with a lot of shame. So they can feel a lot of kind of almost self-vilification or that internal conflict between what they feel, what they're doing, and what kind of society tells us mothers are supposed to do. Did you get any of that? Did you have any of those experiences while you were being?
definitely, absolutely, definitely, because it's like, you do have your ups and downs, right? And, kids have a mind of their own. so,
Mm.
so that, you want them to be, to be able to eat their food, go to bed, and do as they are told, but that doesn't happen,
No.
and then sometimes you're extremely tired, and especially if you're struggling, because I was a single mom, soon after my daughter was born. So I had to struggle financially a lot, and I was going through I was going through so much grief,
Mm.
trying to think back about the things that happened with my mom and our relationship, and trying to just digest all of this life experience that I was going through. And I was very alone. I was very alone. I didn't have many friends at that time that I can trust and really talk about what was going through my mind, really. Um so yeah, sometimes I did think like, oh, if I didn't have my daughter, um maybe it would have been a little better, because then um maybe if I did had a career, if I had a little bit more money, if I was um, not in Norway, maybe, then I can offer all the things that I can give her. And then I had felt a humongous guilt when I had my daughter during the period when I was a single mom. Like, can I really offer her the things that my mother offered me? You know, I can't offer my daughter piano lessons, say for example. My mother really saved up so much money for us to go to a private school, to do piano lessons, to go to all these different activities, you know, be able to buy us certain clothes to make us look, you know, particularly good. And, you know, I didn't feel like I reached up to my parents' level of care at the time. I had to really do what I can, you know. Um, so I think like is this conflict where I go, I mean, it sounds really bad, you know, to say that I shouldn't have my daughter or anything, but because eventually you go, well, she's here now. I need to just keep going. I just had to keep going, even though I feel completely crap and feeling guilty about it. So you do have that, and I don't think, you know, this, you know, that there, like, just like you said, there is like this idea that mothers should be calm, serene, and collected, and doing all the stuff at home, you know, all the domestic chores, and that the guy doesn't, you know, kind of come in and all that. And I don't think that's right. I think mothers should be able to just rant, to kind of get it out of their system. Like, you know, I'm having a really shitty day, you know, I had like this incident with my daughter when she was a little older where literally she was having a tantrum outside the store. You know, she was on the ground, you know, and I just literally had to drag her out, even though it looked like I had no control of my daughter. You know, there was literally a guy that came along and gave my daughter a sweet, because I'm like, why did you do that? Because I poured her out of the store so that she could have that, you know, sweets, you know, and it kind of devalued me in a way as a mother in those instances. But I feel like, you know, you should just allow a mother be a mother and try to, you know, sort out the situation. And I literally just carried her through the shopping mall with her on my shoulders like this and going out. You know, people were looking and go, what the hell's going on? But it was, you know, and there are times like that, and you go home and you literally cry your eyes out and go, oh no. You know, and you have so much of this, all these people like looking at you, also makes you really think like, are you a good mother too? And then now my daughter's a little older, you know, we had another incident where I literally came home quiet, extremely quiet, and just bawled out my eyes. And it was the time when I knew my daughter was tired. She had football. And I was, you know, she was talking to her friends because it was the Corona situation where parents can't go on the field. So I was waving at my daughter. She saw me and I said, you have to come out now. You know, we need to get home because we live quite far away from the school. So I need you to get home so that you can actually get your hours of sleep. And I knew she was getting tired, and I literally had to just break the rules and just go on the field and just grab her and go, look, we really need to go now. And she went really angry with me. And she was like storming across the field, crying her eyes out and saying, you're a bad mom. You know why? You know, I hate you. I don't want to be here, you know. And then she ended up saying, you know, you should go back to your own country. And I'm like, whoa. And all these kids were running after her as well. You know, parents were looking and going, what's going on? Did I do something bad? And I was mortified because it's like she was saying these screaming, you know, across the field, getting out of the school area. And then we were on on the tram and everything. And I just sat there very, very quietly. But I did talk to her. Like, I had to kind of grab her and say, look, calm down. I know you're angry. I know you're very upset right now. But please believe me that I just want you to go home now so you can get some sleep. As you can see, you're very moody, and that happens when you're very tired. So let's just get home. And I think like the whole entire journey, I just did not speak. I did not say anything because I was just so heartbroken, because what happened was that when she said that, go back to your own country, I don't know how that came about. Was that from listening to other adults saying it? Because it's something, obviously being an immigrant, you do get people saying this in different ways. And she have met situations where, there are people who talk to us in a very, manner that was slightly hostile, let's say. So I don't know whether she picked that up or whether she picked that up on the news or whatever. So that really shocked me. That comment really shocked me. I understood that she was upset, she was angry, and she hated me. Kids always hate their parents at some point, so that I get. But to say that, you should go back to your own country, that really hurt. That really, really hurt. So it's like this roller coaster. So when you're at that situation as a mom, of course I still love my child, but it doesn't mean that I don't get upset, or feeling a great dread, of being in a foreign country, especially with my situation being a foreign mother who don't speak the language, who hasn't gone through, the schooling that she's going through. My schooling is very, very different from hers, that I feel so incompetent, So you do get that. You're not going to be perfect. And you're not going to be perfect in the sense that what Norwegian parents often think of immigrant parents. I often find there is a slight difference, and it is those differences that we need to kind of understand. Is not necessarily right or wrong sometimes.
So first of all, thank you for sharing all that story. That was is heartbreaking to hear. But I want to draw out some of what you're talking about here, which is that mothers get judged from so many different places. They experience judgment from society, from people walking down the street, from people in the store, from their children, from their partners, from their family members. And so I'm just wondering, what were some of the things you kind of did to cope with that kind of feeling of constantly being surveilled or constantly being kind of observed, I guess?
I think it's really trying to reflect, and also kind of, it's kind of like this cognitive training, right? You're constantly asking, like, do their opinion matter? For me, it's like yes and no, because we've heard so many stories about Barnevron taking children away from parents, and there's so much power dynamic in that sense that if some of these parents, or if some people see that I may not be a good mother, and if they decided to take that approach to go to Barnevron, or even the police, that would put me in a very bad situation. It's like the Karen, right? So it's like, and then at the same time, it's like, I really shouldn't have to worry about what these people think, because I think I'm doing the best that I already can. And I think that I could fight back. And I think so, in a sense that, when I had my daughter as well, I guess I go back to there, because when I was growing up, there were always, in my family circle, that I was not good enough. There always was talking behind my back, thing. And when I had my daughter, out of wedlock, there were words that spoken about me, from the circle. And it were horrible things like, you're a slut, you sleep around, and all these type of thing. And I already have to really ignore that, and go, I'm going to rise above that. I'm not going to listen to the shit. And this is going to be the same here when, you have parents and people saying who you are and everything. I try to go, I'm going to not let that affect me, because that meant that they won. And I know that I'm not that kind of person. And I think, like, as long as I keep going and people see me, who I am, that keeps me going at the end of the day. So I try to, recognize that happened, but also kind of try to say that doesn't really, that doesn't say anything about who I am, really.
You're one of the, just so you know, and I've told you this before, you're one of the strongest people I've ever met in my life. And I would imagine that some of that experience has made you even more resilient. So I was just wondering if you could reflect on that. Like, how has your experience as a mother, how is your experience as a woman living in Norway from different origins, how has that kind of shaped your strength, your power?
Yeah, so growing up, it's been obviously very tough. I think I shared a story where I said that when I was about 7 or 8, I witnessed my parents being beaten up in front of me. So I really was at a very early stage was introduced to this violent world, very dark world that hated this color of my skin. You know, and my parents, especially my mom would say, "You above all people need to work 200%. You can't just work the 100% or less than that. You have to be more than that." And although many people think that that's like a tiger mom kind of behavior, but it's because there's a reason for that, because we know that we are at disadvantage. And if we don't work our asses off, we are going to fall behind. We might not get a job, and not going to get the life we kind of wanted. And I think like that kind of built up. And then it got to the point where my mother got really sick. And then it was the time when I was still trying to, I had to really toughen up, because it meant like I had to protect my mom. It's like this protectiveness that you want to protect your loved ones in some ways and forms. And when I am, sorry, I'm just going to on vibrate my phone. So I'm going to just turn it to silence if I did. So basically, so when my mother got really, got really sick, there were times when I had to be the one who had to fight for her rights, in the hospital, whether it's, getting her the medicine that she needed because she was in so much pain, and I can see her oxygen level dropping. And I think those little things really challenged me to step up and show myself and go, you can do this, you can go. And then when it kept going, and I think it just built up the layers of who I needed to be. And when I became a mother, especially, she only got me as a mom to protect her. And I really felt that. I need to do something for her, and how I can change the world to be a better place for her to kind of be in there. And I think that toughness comes from that. And, I have my own personal journey, and people who try to put me down, and either mentally or verbally, and and physically in some ways. So in those sense, I have to be strong in order to keep my sanity, but also to protect my daughter. And I think that all of that kind of came together to where I need to be now. And having gone through domestic violence myself, and all these type of things, meant that either you go down or you go up, and then figure out how you can go up there. And it is developing that strength in doing so, because I don't think there's any other way. I mean, of course, people could choose to head another way, and I've seen people heading the other way, but I think that won't be necessarily good, because I don't think that I'm the only one in the world who is going through the things that I'm going through. That's what I feel like. And if we can stand together and say, there are things in this world that is going so crap, and we have experienced it, it gives us a stronger voice, and that we can actually do something collective to move things forward. So I'm kind of directing all that energy, all that frustration, that sadness, and either it's the system or the individuals or so forth, is just trying to put that energy somewhere a bit more healthy, and then trying to create a better world. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, not fixating on the problem, but really trying to force yourself into identifying solutions and working in partnership with others. I think it's a beautiful message, and I think that's so valuable coming from you. It's especially valuable for anyone who has had similar experiences as you have had. I want to go back to the pregnancy issue again, because I think this is really important for us to just understand people's human beings' perspectives and experiences during that part of their lives. And in the media, we get like very sanitized versions of pregnancy, right? Like you see this woman with a belly, and then there might be some jokes about morning sickness kind of thing, but it's kind of almost from the man's point of view. It's never really oriented or focused on the woman's point of view, because pregnancy can be really, really messy and disturbing in a health way, in a way in terms of a person's health. So I'm wondering, what sort of health experiences did you have during the pregnancy? Was there any complications, any problems that you had? What were the main challenges?
Yeah, so I had a complication. So firstly, I was sort of anemic, so I had to take iron supplements. I know that I tried it to do it through diet, but the diet didn't really get the numbers up. So I actually had to really take on the tablets and bring the iron level up. But also, I was taking in a lot of like water in my legs. So it was interesting because I was asking my aunts and about this, and they said that, and even my dad said, your mother had the same thing actually, that your legs will swell and you keep swelling, and it became extremely hard for me to walk around. In fact, what they had to do was induce me. I think it was at 40 weeks. I can't remember 40. And so then I felt extremely vulnerable. I can't do anything. I was at the mercy of the people around me who were taking care of me. And even when it came with, because obviously this was my first pregnancy, which often takes a long time. And when they induced me, it was like 24 hours or so. It was a very, very long time. And it was a very painful experience. It was extremely painful experience. I tried meditation because I really did not want to have any needles coming in, any chemicals or whatever in my body. So I think I managed to meditate for 2 hours when I had these contractions. And then I was like, I'm done. I need it now. Give me the epidural, whatever it is. And they were giving me this gas mask. And they also did like acupuncture. What I didn't know at the time was when they were putting these needles behind my back, I totally forgotten about it. So I leaned on it. I only found out after I'd given birth, and then my ex-sister-in-law and my daughter's father and said, yeah, we got to tell you something. I was like, what? It's like, yeah, you remember the time when you had those needles at your back? It's like, yeah. It's like, yeah, at one point you leaned on it. So we had to grab the nurse to come in and trying to get it out. So I'm like, oh, okay, that makes some sense because my back is hurting like hell. So it was like those things, but also like during the whole pregnancy, it was messy. It was because because I was induced, it took a very long time, and then the doctor came in, and she was like going, okay, we, because it's been going such a long time, we will want to perform a C-section on you. And I told her, actually, I really don't want a C-section. I still want a natural birth. I want to keep going and keep pushing. And then suddenly she switched, her personality completely switched. And she just came and she just said, I'm going to override your decision. You're going to have a C-section now. And I'm like, why, what? And I was so confused at that point. I was tired like hell. And then I was literally crying. I'm like going, no one should ever have so much power over my body. This is my body, whether this doctor had any communication skills at all, I don't know. But it was so frightening. And I was so glad that my ex-sister-in-law, but I kind of see her as still as a sister from another mother, that she was there, and talking to the doctor and also the midwife. She was not Norwegian. She's actually from Denmark, which I was so pleased that she stepped up and she said, can I talk with you outside? And she took the doctor outside. And then I don't know what she said to the doctor, but, she came back in. I said that, don't worry, relax. I think what you need is just to take about an hour's rest, and then you start pushing again. You take some juice, some water, just relax and all that. So then that was what happened, after about an hour or so, just resting and then taking some juice, my daughter came out naturally. So that meant I didn't need to have that C-section at all. And then obviously after my daughter came out, I was just, so thankful. I was just like, oh my God, this little being, she's so tiny, but heavy at the same time. I was like, there was so much stuff going on. And it was interesting because at that time, when I was pushing and I was having, such a bad time, the window was open and it was a summer. It was quite warm. And this yellow butterfly flew in. And I was thinking I must be dreaming. But I ended up asking, my sister and my daughter's father, like, am I seeing this right? Is this really a butterfly? Because for us Chinese people, what that symbolizes is that someone who close to you who recently died is visiting you. So for me, it was like, oh, that's my mom trying to protect me. So that was kind of, I don't know, it sounds a little crazy for some people in the West who don't believe in these stuff, but that was just weird for me. So then when that happened, when I had my daughter and I had to stay in the hospital for, I think it was about a week because of my condition with my legs, and they want to monitor me and everything. And there were so many things that was happening. I had such a bad time with that doctor. I was already induced, so I was in so much pain. And then there was this nurse that came in, and she said, all right, it's breakfast time. And I said that, okay, would you mind getting it for me because I couldn't walk. I was going to be in so much pain. And she said, no, you have to go and do it. So I literally had to get up, like slowly walk with my hand on the wall, like slowly to get my breakfast, And I was literally crying the whole time. And there was my daughter and in her little, cubicle thing. And I felt like that's discrimination right there. And then it kept going, because, thankfully my legs got slightly better. And then we had to take my daughter up to, I can't remember which level it was, where she'll be checked by a doctor. So the same nurse took all my daughter's clothes off for the doctor to examine, and then it was pretty quick, and it's like, yep, she's fine and all that. She seems to be okay. And then what the nurse did was like to throw the clothes back on my daughter, not even like putting it back on. It was just like throw on top of my daughter like this, bam. And I'm like, what? It's like, that's my baby girl. Why you did that? I was just choking inside. I'm like, why did that happen? And I remember her because she had this really very bright red lipstick on. And I just like was just so shocked that this was happening. And I was thinking, at one point I was thinking, is my daughter gonna die, or am I gonna die? Because you hear like in the US, many of the African Americans die in hospital during birth because they get mismanaged and because of racism and so forth. So I thought, is that going to happen to me in this hospital? And then I was just got to the point where things were happening like that, and I had to talk, and I was just so upset that I was just screaming. I just remembered like telling like the nurse going, I want to see your head of the nurse. I need to see someone who manages this floor right here, right now, because I can't take this anymore. Even this very small thing there, what happened was also before that was also that they took my daughter away without letting me know. So when I woke up, I couldn't find my daughter. I was going frantic. I mean, what would have been nice was that they would have written a note and saying, hey, we just took your daughter for checkup, you were sleeping, but there was nothing. I was frantically, looking at my lost daughter somewhere. So all this like things were accumulating, and then I just went ballistic, and eventually the head of nurse came, and I said that, hey, look, this has happened. I don't think that's right. I don't know why that's happening to me. I think it's, you should read the charts. There should be something to say that I can't really walk because I've got swollen legs. Don't do that to me. And I think they took that complaint. I don't know really what they did with it, because like a lot of the times where I feel like in these situations that you can complain, but they may not record it, document it or anything, and then they just continue with this mismanagement basically. And even with the doctor, it took me, I think, 3 months after I started recovering from the pregnancy and the labor, to actually write a complaint letter to the head, to talk about the doctor's behavior and everything. And she did get reprimanded, and it was on her documents, they said. So I feel like at least they did something there. But then again, how many of these doctors get away with it? And we don't know, so that happens. So so that was my pregnancy, and my sister was there, where she actually took photos And so I ended up seeing back those photos of, the placenta coming out. It was humongous. And, obviously it's very bloody and everything. And it's just, but it was really, really nice because that's what it is, that's what happens,
That's the process.
And it's just something I also want my daughter to see as well. It's like, yeah, your mother gone through so much pain, and this is what happens if you want to have a kid, because it is so easy for kids nowadays to see these TV series online, where there's relationships going on, and then someone getting pregnant, there's a baby coming out, but they don't really know the process. It's actually, it can be quite painful, and it can be very bloody, and lots of needles and all that. So so that was kind of my journey, and it wasn't a very pleasant one, to be honest with you, and which is one of the reasons why I am very closely working on projects that involves hospitals, involves women, because I don't want them to go through what I've gone through. And I'm only speaking about it now because I was so afraid of how people would see me before. So.
And we have so many medical drama TV shows, but I've never once heard a story with as much kind of, and I don't mean downplay it, but yeah, there's a lot of drama. There was a lot of high emotions and huge challenges that you had to overcome in that experience. And yours is one experience of likely many millions of women who have to go through a medical system that's either really messed up in terms of incentives, or like you had already alluded to, issues of racism, and of course sexism is all wrapped up in there too. So I'm really sorry that happened to you. It sounds just absolutely horrible. And it sounds completely unjust. On a happier thought, I want you to, if you remember when the first time you felt Hazel kind of kick, can you go back to that day and tell me about what that experience was?
Oh, the first kick. It's funny because my daughter, in our close family, we have a nickname for her, for long legs, because because when she kicks me right in the snow, it was really hard. I kept asking with some of my friends who were pregnant, it's like, does your baby kick you that hard? Because it's literally, you can actually see it as well. You can see like this print just coming up, and she was kicking me right in the rib, basically. And I was like going, wow, okay. But it was like this weird sensation, but it was also like, wow, there's something in there. It's really, and she's alive, and she obviously want to come out now. But yeah, I end up seeing her personality, and that's what I saw. Even when she was in my belly, I already saw her being a very, active being, and she was when she came out, and she still is. She's very active. I kind of understand how much energy she gets. And I remember, like, I don't know, it's really interesting, just because you do see these viral videos of parents, right? When they had this belly, and then you see like the little prints poking up, and it was a bit like that, really. When she was like inside. And I remember when I had this ultrasound once, I also saw it on the screen on the monitor of her like really yanking her legs out. And I was like, yeah, she wants to come out. So no, but it was fun. It was really nice. It was just, it sort of feels quite unbelievable that this human being can actually kind of grow inside of you, and it was getting bigger and heavier, and you're doing what you can to protect it. Yeah, I don't know, it's just it's a wonderful feeling. It's also this sensation is like, wow, just
awe-inspiring. I want to go into now your relationship with Hazel, and of course, you kind of knew her from that moment before she was even born, and so I wonder if you could just talk to me about where your relationship was with her now, and kind of how that evolved since that day.
I think I had to, what I did was I have this like pregnancy Bible that kind of already gives me an idea of what to do, and how to take care of her when she's a little baby. And then I have like so many books, like Montessori books, how do you kind of teach a child, all these her motors, and to have all the development that you expect a child to have. I also did like child psychology diploma, just to kind of get to what a kid is thinking and how they develop their language, and their sense, and their other senses, and all this type of thing. So I was trying to feel like I feel like, I'm kind of ready. I know all this stuff, but in practice is really different, actually. And I often have to keep learning. I keep going to forums to trying to figure out, how can I better that relationship. And I think like kids go through certain phases as they grow up, because my daughter is very, inquisitive. She asks a lot of questions, even when she was young. And sometimes I feel like I may not be the best explainer sometimes, because I end up going quite complicated. Um, and there was one point where she said that, how did humans became to be, and how did we kind of exist? She was already asking these kind of questions, and I'm like, those are very big questions, Hazel. I have to get back to you.
gotta Google that one.
Because I really don't know. It's like are monkeys and humans really alike? And I was like completely blown away. How did we had dinosaurs and things like that? She was questioning a lot of things, and just the relationship with us is constantly, I think, is trying to build a lot of trust. And I think I'm also very, very aware and conscious and sensitive about her situation, because at quite a young age she had parents who separated. And that was, from my experience of anxiety and depression, and all sorts, and mental health illnesses, is that I could see the trauma. Like, she was not doing well at all when we had the separation. And I still remember to this day, when I had to take her to her father's place, during a weekend, and at Carl Bonner's Plus, she was like, I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave. I want to be with you. And she was screaming screaming so much that it really like hit me. And I often feel that because of those moments that she was separated, I was very concerned about her attachment. It was a healthy attachment. Is it a positive one, or is it a bad one? Because in a childhood, if that attachment was not healthy or good and positive, it can lead to adulthood problems, which I can see in myself. So I was very, very careful that whenever she was with me, that this was a safe space. I often try and create as much of a safe space for her to speak her mind. I mean, of course, sometimes she tells me things that I get so angry that I just want to talk to her father or whoever been hurting her or whatever, and I had to kind of really calm myself, because, she obviously told me this, and, I shouldn't really be having that reaction, because she just wanted me to kind of listen, unless she really specifically told me to do something about it. So then it kind of, me also teaching her the Chinese language, and also like this language development as well, it was fun for me, because I did teach Cantonese, and I do love teaching. I do love like mentoring people and all that. So I was trying to kind of get her to learn these different languages, but early on I can see like her mind can't take so much. So I kind of just narrowed it to English and Norwegian until she was ready to kind of take on a little bit more knowledge, because she was still, in my experience, I could tell that she was still trying to understand the emotions, and her emotional development as well, that I could see was quite, a spectrum. She can get really upset about things that sometimes I don't know, and then she closes up. And as soon as she closes up is when I get really worried, because she can't say anything, she can't tell anything, whether it's because she couldn't really describe the feeling that she was going through, or whatever it was. So I took a lot of time to really understand her, to kind of be the mom, but also be the friend, and also really try to be as much in her life as possible. And then up to until now, I think we have, not to say that we don't have our downs, it's always an up and down with our kids. But I think she's grown up to be a very, very sensitive considerate child. And I think one of the things that really, really spoke to me about her character was when it was during the time when we sort of was separated, and I think it was about a month, where I was just lying on the sofa. I couldn't think, I didn't know what to do with my life, and all that. And she wanted to play, and I told her that I couldn't, because mommy was still very sad and then very tired. And then she would just take a blanket, a fleece blanket, and then she would just pour that over me on the sofa. And when that happened, I was like, oh, wow, now I really need to get up. I think she also gives me strength.
Yeah.
She always gives me the lightness of this world, when the world that I was living in, I felt it was so dark.
Yeah.
So she kind of opens up with her innocence and that childhood innocence in her about another world that I often don't see. So it gives me light. She gives me this hope that, if kids are born with this kindness, there must be other people like that out there as well. So I know it's an interesting thing. I always feel like I'm learning from my daughter, even though she's learning from me, but I feel like I learn from my daughter a lot about, this human being side, that, this innocent side where we can think of things a bit more simpler. It doesn't have to be that complicated. So yeah. So I think like up until now, it's just me trying to point her in the right direction, how to be a better person, to think of others. She's so kind, and she did get bullied at school. I was a little bit concerned about that, and I think it's also because of her character, because she's so kind, and people kind of pick on her because she doesn't like confrontation. She doesn't like to fight back, which is something I'm trying to get her. But that comes with courage, and it comes with a certain sense of that you have that ability. And I'm not sure if my daughter is there. At times she would fight back. I said that use mom as someone that you can fight back on. I know you're going to rebel against me anyway, but trying to get that kind of sense as well, that you need to have that when you go out there too. I might be tough on you as a mom, but I want you to be able to stand up to that as well when you go outside. So I think we have a really good relationship now, and I think it's she's trying to understand, like, to kind of be comfortable with looking Chinese, because she does look like me, the mini me, which is nice. So to kind of be in touch with her Chinese roots, because before she didn't want to be. And I think that has a lot of influence from school and the people around her, who kind of denied her that heritage that she had. But now she's really like, yeah, I want to learn this. I want to learn Chinese. I want to keep going with that, and not having to care about what other people think. So I think it's been it's been nice. I think it's a journey. I'm going on a journey with her, so.
They always say I guess it's the first generation that rebels against the parents who immigrated, and then it's the second generation that tries to reconnect with that heritage. Because I see the same in my dad and myself. Like when my dad was a young guy, he, his parents immigrated from Greece, and so he kind of pushed back against that identity a little bit. And of course, myself and my brother are just trying to reconnect in some way, shape, or form to what our grandparents' lives were like and things like that. So, yeah, I see that. I could imagine that must be the case for Hazel, at least in some small respect. All right, I want to turn to a different line of questioning now. We talked a lot about your pregnancy and about Hazel, and I think that's a really important part of who you are. But I want to turn more now to the different aspects of your identity, your gender, obviously, but then I also want to get into kind of your racial or your ethnic identity, your cultural identities. And there's so many, there's such a multifaceted and complex person that you are, that I think I find absolutely fascinating and endearing. And so I want to just start really broad. You have such a unique background, a unique experience. Can you give me like 3 ways that experience has kind of shaped who you are and kind of how you think about yourself?
Are you saying from the cultural identity, how that shapes me now, or all of it? Okay. Let me see how I can unpack
complexity that is common.
I like to refer to, like, this philosophy of the rice bowl I often talk about, because it's a bit easier to kind of simplify of what that means. Because, but I think that this rice bowl metaphor in the Chinese culture stayed with me and stuck with me to being who I am today. And what I mean is that I grew up with my parents talking around a bowl of rice a lot, whether it's from my dad experience of growing up in the village, not having enough money, and what they literally have is a bowl of rice and, you know, some soy sauce on top, you know, just to get through the day, basically. And that's a very humble and frugal living that for me, you know, I honestly don't need a mansion or anything, you know, beyond that. I just want to be able to have a comfortable home to be in, really. So I think I'm quite different from a lot of people in that sense, even from when I was younger, when I hear people like, yeah, I'm going to want to have my own apartment. I want to have a big house. I want to have like a Ferrari and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm not too bothered by that. But also it's like this, how do people manage to get a bowl of rice on the table for themselves and for the family? What I mean is that in order to put food on the table, that's basically what this whole metaphor is about, is how does one person be able to put food on the table can go by many means. And no one should ever cut off that person's way of getting, you know, that the food on the table, you know. So it's, you know, my parents worked really hard, you know, it may not be the best job in the world, you know, but they put food on the table, you know. And it's the same, like even now today, because of Corona, you know, people were laid off and things like that. It's like, but for me, it's like, are they getting the food on the table? Are they paying their living expenses and things? So that always carried with me, that on a larger scale. So if you think of, so there's this TV drama in Hong Kong, which I resonate so much. So it's a family that was running these rice paddy fields. The rice is so important that, you know, it feeds off the whole entire village, in the whole entire town. But if the rice, you know, goes bad or anything like that, people will starve. So for me, it's like the same thing with that, what's happening right here now with the coronavirus, with all the economic problems, with also this transformation in digital, is like, how many of the people get food on the table, and why are they not getting that? So that's a very, very Chinese type of thinking. It's like, how do you have that? And that carries on with me. So when I think about people's welfare, whether it's in my team or the society that I'm trying to build, I think on that level, you know, because that's kind of ingrained in me from my family and the Chinese way of thinking about, you know, this collectiveness, I guess, rather than individuals, but this collectiveness of empowering others in some ways, which for some people may think is a little bit strange, but that's not how it is when I grew up anyway. But so I think that Chinese side is also this tough love as well. It's like, you know, the world is going to throw a lot of things at you, but you need to get back up, you know, because my dad often says, we really don't have time to be sick, you know, because I find that really tough, because it's like, dad, you know, but my dad's a little softer now. He's okay with that. But when we were growing up, you know, he was really, my parents were very tough on us in some ways. And we just had to keep going, you know. I remember my parents liked to use my sister as an example, because my sister early on wanted to do medicine, and she's a doctor now. But you know, she was really sick. She had tonsillitis, and then she still did her exams. I think it was GCSE, and she just aced it all, you know. And my parents were so proud and everything, and used that example. It's like, she was sick, she got aced, and I'm like, but I'm not her.
It's so unfair.
So yeah, so that's this Chinese side of it. It's like this really you know, family, you know, being able to support on each other and all that type of thing. And even if you're 18, you know, you're still a kid to the parents, and they still, so in the West it's very different. So being brought up in Britain is a very different type of construct, I would say. Like this, we would find it weird for families who, when the kids are 18, they say, oh, they're adults, we're going to kick them out, you know, they need to survive like this. And I also, what? They were 18, you know. I think if they were 30, maybe that makes sense, but you know, they're 18, you know. So so I thought that was a little bit odd. I mean, it's still odd, you know, from the Chinese perspective, because you know, we still see our kids as our kids, you know. And in the West, it's like this, you know, kind of, I don't know, individual way of thinking about your personal growth, your
Mm,
mental health, your kind of like, I know this kind of, like, one of the big things, I think the big difference that I could see was how parents or cultures see grades. You
mm,
know, because my parents were really tough. You know, they want me to ace everything, but in Britain, they see that your grades does matter to an extent, but
mhm,
your mental health matters more. Like,
mm,
are you happy with your life? Are you, you know, that's kind of how I felt.
mm,
And I still see that in Norway as well, you know, that they're teaching kids to, you know, be confident with themselves, you know, mentally and physically and so forth, so that they can work through life. So I think there's a bit of a difference there, because I think in the traditional way of the Chinese way of thinking, is that all kids, if they have good grades, you know, immediately get jobs, but that's not necessarily the case anymore. I feel that, you know, everything is out the window.
mm,
Um, so I think that's also, and also just, I don't know, it's interesting you say that, because I do reflect on it a lot, but I've been reflecting a lot on my Chinese heritage a lot.
yeah,
But on that British side, I don't reflect so much,
mhm,
because I think when I moved here to Norway, I feel like I had to keep hold of my Chinese identity more, and I try to get to know this heritage of mine rather than this British side.
mm,
Obviously, I follow what's going on in Britain, you know, in terms of, you know, the movement that's going on, and how they have conversations, in which I can bring on to my professional career and the personal level too. And it's just, yeah, it's just this way of um yeah, how they deal with things over there.
mm,
And I think like people maybe a little bit more open. I don't know, it's really interesting, because I really don't think of that British side of me so much.
mm,
I feel like I've lost a little bit of that contact. And it's not that every British person that comes here in Norway as well, that I get so that I can connect with either. I think I connect with British people with minority backgrounds the most.
okay, yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
I wonder if you could kind of pick that apart a little bit more and talk a little bit about how you see your British identity and your Chinese identity. How do you see that being valued in Norwegian society? Because I see that you have been trying to kind of hold fast to this your Chinese identity, but I'm wondering if that is because you didn't see yourself represented, or you didn't see yourself valued in the same way as you saw your British identity being valued.
I think that might be the case. I mean, the thing was that obviously we had the Brexit,
Mm.
you know, that was going on. And I also knew like in Britain they had like oh, is it equivalent to FRP party? I can't remember, was it UK KIP or something?
Yeah,
UKIP, I think.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
so they were pushing a narrative about us immigrants. And I
Mm.
felt completely um disbelief, and also how can they say such a thing, you know, they were already saying like people like me, who my parents were immigrants, that our British passport should be taken away, that we should not call ourselves British. And I felt extreme heartbroken, and I felt like, do I really belong in the UK? I mean, I speak, you know, with a British accent, and you know,
Mm.
I still have certain, you know, British aspects to me,
Yeah,
that it can be apparent in the way I talk sometimes. But
yeah,
but when that happened, and I think when the Brexit happened, I felt like I was excluded
yeah,
the
sure.
whole entire thing. And
Mm.
you know, even now I feel like I just want to get that Norwegian citizenship, because at least
Mm.
here I do have a sense of belonging to a
Mm.
certain extent. But in Britain, I feel like I don't really belong there, which made
Mm.
it really hard to kind of think of sometimes moving back there, because it's completely different. Even though my family is there and everything, it's just um I don't know, I just like, I couldn't wrap my head around it, you
Mm.
know. And this, what is Britishness? You know, obviously the British history has been ugly and bloody, you know, if you look at the colonial history of it. um And obviously with the, you know, Chinese, we have our own history there. And, you know, I can actually really relate with most of the, what we call the British-born Chinese, people like me who are born there with parents who are from either Hong Kong or China. And we have very similar experiences. And I found my belonging there, and I still do. So I'm still in these Facebook groups, you know, finding that sense of belonging and trying to understand what's happening over there, because it's kind of segregated in some ways, not so scope, but it's still there. And yeah, it's just, and also I think like when I moved here as well, the first thing people saw was my skin color, you know. And I feel like maybe that kind of gave me a little bit of a nudge, because a lot of times they don't talk about the UK to me. People ask me like, oh, Hong Kong. So I heard about in the news that they had this, you know, Occupy movement going on. What's your views on that? And I'm like, okay. Do I represent Hong Kong? So I don't know, because it feels like I don't fully represent Hong Kong, and I don't fully represent the UK. And I feel like I'm often in between. And I often feel like I get torn in between two cultures all the time, you know. And it's, yeah, I feel like I'm in Hong Kong because I guess as people do ask me about it, and also I take advantage of it, I leverage it over here, you know, being able to speak Cantonese and also speak English perfectly. You know, one of my very first job was becoming an interpreter, and becoming a Cantonese private teacher, you know, because we will really want to learn this. That was really, really interesting. So I was thrown into to kind of more in my Chinese side than my British side, if you see what I mean. So.
Oh, it's absolutely fascinating, and I mean, I feel like what you're saying resonates with me too, because you know, having Greek background, American background, and living here in Norway, I get asked stuff about Greece as if I grew up there my whole life and I know everything about Greek politics, and I'm just like, no, I'm a foreigner in Greece. Like, I'm a foreigner there, I'm a foreigner here, I'm kind of even a foreigner in the U.S. now.
Exactly.
So you know, you never, well, at least I've struggled to kind of find that connection with any single identity. It's just a you know, fruit salad kind of thing.
Yeah, we're global. I often say that I'm a global citizen, because I feel like that's kind of how I feel, because I haven't been back in the UK for 10 years now. And I know things has changed immensely over there, especially with the Brexit now. And that makes me extremely nervous of my status here as well. And then if I go to Hong Kong, things are changing over there. And then in Norway, it's like I've been here, but it's just like there's stuff going on too. You know, with the Norwegian election coming up, I have no idea how that's going to be as well. And it's just, yeah, I'm kind of all over the place, and I'm still trying to figure out, you know, where my sense of belonging. Obviously, my sense of belonging is in pockets of them, you know, in all of them. So.
It's absolutely fascinating. So, all right, we talked about your kind of ethnic identity, your cultural identity, your racial identity. I want to move a little bit to gender now, because I think this is a really important topic, really important issue that we all kind of have to cope with. But in some ways, we kind of deal with gender in kind of a new, in a way that's neutral. Like, we want to pretend like gender doesn't matter. Like, we live in a society where gender is not an issue. But well, all that means often in practice is that we kind of default to male, masculine values and things like that. And so I want to draw a little bit out of you, your own gender identity and how that's kind of shaped your perspective. But before you answer, I want to just have this clarity for people listening that you and I've talked about these issues before. I've got your consent to ask these questions before I ask them. And so it's not like I'm just, you know, kind of putting you on the spot here. So I think it's important that we say that, just so people don't get the wrong impression. But your gender, how do you identify? What has your experience been as a person in the world?
Yeah, so obviously me as a woman, obviously I talked about, you know, my pregnancy and you know, that trauma that only perhaps a woman would go through. A man can't really go through that. So it means that we see certain things in a different perspective. Definitely, I feel more vulnerable. So, you know, one of the things that I see a big difference is like, because I go to a lot of these workshops where we go, so what are you doing combating, you know, everyday racism, you know, type of thing? Do you stand up? And I remember saying that if I'm on my own, I can stick up. There's an incident where I was on the T-banner and I overhear this white Norwegian guy badgering these two African young ladies who at the time didn't have any mask on and anything like that. And he just kept going and going at them. And I can see that they were becoming extremely uncomfortable. And I decided to go, you know what, girls? Would you like to come with me? We can sit somewhere else. We can have a chat. Obviously this guy is being a dick, really, if I can say it that way, And so, I kind of like, went to another place, but I went particularly at a spot where I can keep an eye on him, because at least I know when he's going to get off, and I can understand when the girls are getting off too. But if I had my daughter with me, and there were times when my daughter was with me, and my daughter actually held me back and said, I don't want you to confront that guy or anything, because there's one incident, or there are a couple of them, but there was one incident where we were at the Taiwan station, and this young girl was screaming at this man saying, I don't want to go with you. I want mama. And this guy was completely at a loss. But I could see that this girl was in pain, and I wanted to just go up and see how the girl was doing. But because my daughter was already crying on the side saying, Mom, don't go, and she felt there was threatened, there's a threat there and so much fear, I pulled back. And I said that, and I told her, like, I understand you're frightened, but how about that little girl too? If we can do something better, and I'm here, I'm protecting you. I'm here there too. But I'm just going to ask if that girl is okay, so that she knows that there's someone around that she can talk to. But I did held back, and I think that is the difference, right? If you have like a child, when your mother, and also because I'm not as big as that guy either, because my body is quite short in some ways, and I don't have strong muscles and things, so it's easy to become a victim, actually, if I did go forward in some ways. But I don't think at that time something was going to happen to me, because it was on Taban station, there were cameras and there were other people. But what I see is that this psychological reaction, that when there's so many people, not everyone's going to come forward and do something. And I often would take that step and trying to nudge that, because I feel like if I go in that situation and ask, maybe someone else would also jump in and go, yeah, how's the things going? Because often they would see like, oh, I'm with a kid, or, I'm a girl, and they want to jump in, to help me out as well in the situation. So there are times like that. And obviously because I'm Chinese looking, there's often this stereotype about us, that we must be really good at math. We must be really intelligent. We must be submissive as well. I do. And I see that men do look at me as some kind of eye candy, like the exotic object that they're looking at. And that really pisses me off. And it's just by the tone and the way they talk to you. And sometimes they don't give up. And then you have to go like, I think you should. And I just kind of have to, either not talk to them. And it becomes really difficult sometimes, because it feels like, especially in the business setting where you do meet people constantly, also it's very small. And sometimes, when, I'm in situations, I'd kind of man up a little, just to kind of get that intimidation in, to say that, I may be a woman, I may look like an exotic figure to you, but don't disrespect me. Don't even say anything, comment about my appearance. That would be nice. So then it's kind of like I have to put in certain things just to kind of maybe put off the guy from not looking at me in that way. And obviously, I don't know, it's there are so many different things to unpack. It's just like also this sometimes this microaggression. So I was working in this company full of men who likes to jab at each other, and I felt extremely, extremely uncomfortable. And I remember telling the group about it, because I learned to be outspoken wherever I am. When it was like a room full of men, who is basically this jabbing at each other is very much like bullying. You're teasing the other person, you're kind of putting the other person down, you're trying to humiliate that person, even though that guy fought back with a really, really, good comment, and anything like that. That made me extremely uncomfortable. I didn't understand why that was the case. And then I do get called, are you just being sensitive?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I was like thinking, I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I don't think being sensitive is a bad thing. And I don't think that this caring part of me is a bad thing. It doesn't weaken me. It doesn't say anything about my, incapability of doing my work, and it's precisely the things that I do in communication. I need to be sensitive.
Yeah.
I need to understand what the other person is feeling. So if you guys are not feeling the way that I'm feeling, maybe you guys are the problem, not me, So, and eventually I came out of it in any way. So it's just those type of things that I often see, and also because of the color of my skin, people do make comments, as there's also this like hero complex that I see, like, you need saving. So
Okay.
I'm gonna help you there. Or it's like, because I am British, which means that I've been educated. So meeting the NAV system was also tough because they see me as, this girl that needs help, but they couldn't help me. I didn't know how to place you and everything.
Mm.
And I felt like I was just bung in with other, of a very vulnerable group where they could actually use that, the wording, the language, and whatever they can to kind of empower me. But I also feel like, I often feel like I'm the only one who's empowering myself really in all these situations. So my gender does come in, and also obviously having a child, you end up. I see this big difference as well. I see like there's male leaders who really dump their kids to their partners to deal with.
Yeah.
But as a mom, I can't, especially me being pretty much on my own all the time. I have no one to dump my child with someone.
Yeah.
I can ask a friend,
Mm.
but in the COVID time, that's not possible. And
Mm.
also, it's like there's so much pressure and responsibility on the mother to take care of the kids, where
Mm.
the men don't. I've seen like guys take decisions just like that so quickly, where I would be hesitant because I'm often thinking, am I walking away from my daughter's life, to go on a business trip or so forth, when she really needed me the most, and I had to give her, have her back at her father's place for a few days. And sometimes her father would refuse, for whatever reason, because of work or whatever, So I feel like there was like this slight imbalance that men can take those kind of riskier, daring decisions, where women have to really be sensitive, to, or kind of more considerate of her situation, than I think that I feel like men has,
Mm.
in a sense. So yeah.
Yeah, this is such an important experience to kind of shine a light on and to understand and to kind of empathize with. I think that's the only thing we can do, especially as a man. I mean, there's nothing I can ever do to know what it is to experience life as a woman. But hearing from you those experiences and understanding kind of the little things, but then the big things that kind of shaped your world and your life history, the kind of stuff that you had to deal with, that I think a lot of women would identify with and be able to say, oh yeah, I've had that exact same experience. I know what that's like. I know I've had to deal with that. You mentioned the bullying thing in work. And I think, I would put it back like you did on them. Like, they don't have the social skills to cope in a working environment where bullying isn't part of their social interactions. Like, that's how I would see that situation, is like, can you operate under both in both ways? Because obviously you cannot.
It's,
And
it's,
you
it's yeah.
can, come on, can. And I think that's it's really a testament to your resilience and the capacity you have as a emotional human being.
Yeah, and I think it's also, me protecting my own health.
Yeah,
It's like
totally.
removing myself away from a very toxic environment that
Mm-hmm.
you that I've already made my concern heard. I
Yeah.
told you about it, but if you're dismissive about it, you kind of write it off as, oh, it's just playful, we're just teasing, it's just the way it is. Then why should I stay?
Yeah.
I know some people stay because they need the money and everything, but
Mm.
you know, when you lose your health, you're not going to get money in. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
And I think some people, um, everyone is in very different circumstances. And, obviously I was lucky that I had another job to go to as well. And also other projects and, and paid projects as well that were coming in at the time. So I can safely leave in a sense. But, it's kind of those things, that, I do feel, it's not just this environment, but there were many occasions where I seen men dismiss me on the accounts that this is just the way we talk as men. It's kind of like Trump saying, this is the locker room talk,
Yeah.
And that really is scary,
Yeah, I agree.
especially if these men come up and saying like, when I say, this is, when they ask if I'm a feminist and they start saying yes, that they are too, or they're frightened, they're fighting for some kind of social impact in their work, but at the same time, they can't see that the personal way of being with other women and vulnerable groups of people just doesn't match up. I just kind of feel like you have a lot of work to do, and I don't give a crap the fact that you're trying to make impact in the world, because I see on a personal level you're not quite there yet. So yeah.
No, I see it all the time too. It's just that the people who are in those positions often don't have the social skills or the leadership skills to be able to create an environment, a working environment that is conducive to a diversity of group of people being able to participate meaningfully. And it becomes exclusionary because they don't know any other way to operate. And so it's a kind of, it's tragic in both respects. One, that it happens at all. And then two, that the people who are in those decision-making positions often don't have the social skills to be able to cope any other way. And that's really, that's just a huge issue we're facing. All right. So thank you for giving me the space to kind of reflect on that too, because I think this is enriching for me as the interviewer, as it is just hearing about your experience. I want to move now to your experience as a survivor of abuse and violence, and just get your reflection in any way that you feel comfortable about what that experience has been for you and how you've kind of come through that. What sort of how has that trauma faced your life? Maybe we'll just say it like that.
Yeah, sure. So the first time I heard the domestic violent term was when I was at university. And I was explaining to my professors at the department about my situation at home. But during that conversation, I never used the word domestic violence or a victim or whatever. It was only until the kind of head or the deputy head of the department said, you really need to see a therapist. She didn't tell me exactly what, but she just felt like you need to go and see one now. And so she's the deputy head. I have to listen to her. I kind of felt, that if I don't, maybe she'll kick me out, very Chinese way of thinking about things. But I don't think that was the case. I think she was just concerned about me.
Yeah.
But I did go and I started seeing a therapist, behind my family's back. They didn't know that I was seeing a therapist at the time. And it was for free, which is great. And eventually when I was talking to my therapist, she was pointing out certain things. She was saying she was physical with you. So I'm talking about my mom being violent towards me now. And I was like, yeah, she would hit us, she would kick us, she would wake us up in the middle of the night screaming her head out, and try to whack us with hangers and so forth. And she said, have you ever heard about domestic violence? I was like, nah, I don't think it was. It's just like, what is that? It's because for me, it's like this idea of domestic violence sound much more like a man beating up a wife,
Right.
to me. Not kids being involved, like me at the university age. And she started explaining to me what that was and how my experiences match up to some of that terminology in that sense. And I was just so shocked to have that realization of what situation I was in. I was in denial for a while. But every single time I came back, and when I actually had to say what I'm going through was domestic violence,
Mm.
was the point where I started accepting that this was the situation I'm in. And obviously it was difficult for them to kind of have the tools to kind of deal with my situation, because it's culturally, if I were to speak out about it, if I were to go to the police about it, then my parents would, my mom would potentially go to jail,
Mm.
or she that it gets so big that either I get fostered, or things like that could happen. And I didn't want to go that far. I didn't want to go do that thing. So I was kind of having to really think, how can I get out of this? And what happened was that I moved out of home in my final year, because there was so much conflict and heat going on at home. And honestly, I don't even at this point remember why my mother got angry with so many different things. But I felt like I needed to get out, and I did. But the worst thing was that my siblings were still at home, and so she took her tension to my siblings. And my mom even, for my brother defending me, my mother picked up the knife and tried to hurt my brother, and my dad stopped her, and then and she ended up being in the hospital. Obviously there was a craft of stories around it, and all that. But I get this call from my aunt in Hong Kong, which was very early in the morning. I remember it was really bright, and then she was pretty much begging me to go home and just say I'm sorry. So what happened was that I ended up going home because I want to keep the peace.
Mm.
And there's a tradition when you are paying your respect to your parents, you would kneel down on the ground with a cup of tea in your hand. So I did that to my mom, even though I absolutely did not see anything I did was wrong.
No.
And I had to kind of bite my tongue through that. And I had to kind of also be kind and say, how's your head? How are you feeling? And things like that. And I would go back for dinner almost every day, just to keep the peace at home. I remember my siblings gotten a bit angry with me as well for leaving. So, I mean, eventually I did move back in at the end of after I graduated, because my mother got sick. And I was the only one who graduated, which meant that I had to take over the family business a little bit, and also to kind of, be the one to take care of my mom with my dad, and so forth. So in that journey of that, I was trying to really get out of it, to kind of, instead of playing that, because we don't say victims of domestic violence, we say survivors of domestic violence now. And surviving that really made me stronger, in the sense that I really confronted my mom about her violence. I confronted my mom about, the way that she was bringing us up and everything. And I do believe that my mother had depression. I think my mother had anger issues and things like that, because she was, I think, like me moving over here to Norway, I started understanding her pain. And I think she wasn't back in that time, able to release that pain somehow and trust the people around her who are not looking down on her to talk to. She had no one to talk to. And my father was not the most communicative guy in the world either, because he has this very traditional way of being that husband, that father, not very emotional, don't talk about feelings and all that. And I can still see that nowadays with men. They're not very good at opening up. You might be different though, but but there's many who are not able to speak out those feelings. And then when that happened, it was, obviously I survived, and I managed to get out. And obviously when my mother passed away, there was a sense of relief on my part, because she was not able to hurt me anymore, and I can sort of move on. And I often tell people I'm often in conflict when my mother died, because it's like, it is a sad thing, but at the same time of what she has done to me, it also hurt me like hell. And it still sort of scarred me for life in some ways, because I'm not able to trust other people. So I have a trust issue with a lot of people, and it takes time for me to build up that trust with people. And then, going on, I ended up, one of the things what happened was when I became wanted to become a journalist and wanted to pick up stories, I was looking into what foreign mothers was going through over here, but I didn't think I would be meeting cases of domestic violence. So once again, I had to be confronted with my past and, and what was happening there. And I had to kind of take some time off to kind of recollect and think how I can keep going on this very important topic without sinking, basically, emotionally and all that. And I think, like, because I came out of the situation I did back in England, I was able to resonate with so many of the stories and people coming to me for help to get out of certain situations. And it is really about mental strength in all of it. It's not just physical strength, it's like the mental strength to get out. And I think in England, I think they're statistically saying that it takes a woman, I think, 8 times before they actually leave a domestic violent relationship. And I sometimes count, with myself, how many times, I was trying to get out of from this one and things like that. And also the women I talk to and the people that I talk to, how many times have they tried to get out of the situation, and would they survive, too, because we still live in a capitalist society where money still drive a lot of things. So it kind of, it's shaped me because it made me understand what trauma can do to you and how susceptible you are to. I had another type of much more psychological abuse in my own relationship, and that I got out of and things like that. And it's and some people, they don't realize it because it's very culturally embedded. Like, this is the way you talk, this is the way you do stuff, especially in the Asian community. I see the sign a lot, whether it's an Asian woman or man or whatever, the way they talk, the way they speak, it can be, especially if you have gone through domestic violence, I can see how that escalates in certain circumstances, whether it's with your employee, whether it's within your family and so forth. And it can be really bad if you don't deal with it. And I think in the Asian community, people don't talk openly enough about mental health issues and how their anger, which they feel like is their pride, end up hurting other people. And I see that, and I think, like, because I got this experience myself, is trying to stop that and prevent that from happening in some ways. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's again, it's a very important experience and perspective to talk about, because there's not enough open discussion around these issues, and they're very often just kept private, and they never see the light of day. So there's no way for us to kind of relate if you're experiencing violence or you're experiencing abuse. There's no way to relate that to narratives and movies and television programs a lot of times. And so hearing someone like you talk about that experience and the struggles that you had and the internal conflict of kind of having to balance just things like the death of your mother, like the sorrow, along with that kind of feeling of relief that this person won't be able to hurt you anymore. I just thank you so much. I want to end on a bit of a hopeful note and just ask you, what do you hope for Hazel's future?
That she can just be herself, that she's healthy, mentally, physically, and that she doesn't have to go through the things that I've gone through. Because obviously right now there was the Black Lives Matter movement and everything. And, she there were times where we have been stopped on the bus once, where this guy literally, my daughter was quite young at the time. She didn't really understand, but, he was saying, like, your daughter should be learning Norwegian and maybe she could work for NRK, something like that. And I got really pissed off at this guy who was drunk. Norwegian guy. I don't know why it's always a Norwegian guy sometimes, but I'm pretty sure there's Norwegian women out there who are also as crazy as that. But but my daughter witnessed that, and I started seeing how the society was building up against her in Norway, and I'm hoping that with the movement and everything, it can create a safer place for my daughter. And yeah, just for her to be happy and be able to do the things that she wants, really. It's the simple things, it's not like I want her to be, grand and rich and famous, whatever. I just want my daughter to be happy and healthy.
Well, I will say that she is just a good person. Having met her on a number of occasions, and even my earliest memory of meeting her for the first time, she always struck me as just a good person, and I think I think that's a testament to your ability as a parent, and of course the society she's growing up in. I think that's really
Yeah,
really amazing.
yeah, I remember. I think the first time we met was when I was doing that data analytics.
Mm-hmm.
I remember this really funny incident where she was. I didn't know why she was crying at that point, but when we had the announcement of the prices and everything,
Mm-hmm.
so she saw this other group won a different price, and then she started crying, and I didn't understand why. And then when he announced that we won like this other prize, and then we had to get up, and then she was like, "Oh, what's good?" So I was like, "Yeah, well, mommy won a prize for this one." It's like, "Oh, but I thought you didn't win the prize."
No.
So she's crying because her mommy worked so hard and to get a prize. I was like, "Oh," I said that it doesn't matter. It's like it's the participation that's the most important, because I was learning a lot anyway during that course. So yeah.
I think she got something out of it too. I hope.
Oh yeah, I think she sees like I work all the time and be able to be a mom and also be able to work alongside her, but also be able to attend to her needs. And I think it's really funny because there's this parody, right? I don't know if you remember like this Korean this professor or something. He was on BBC, and then his daughter came running in doing the
Yes.
dancing, and then he didn't know how to deal with it. He was pushing her back, and the mother came in and trying to take her out. Where there was a parody that happened where it was a woman instead. It's like if the kid came in, you can see her doing many different things at the same time on BBC. And I think that's also that difference there.
Yeah.
That you can see like with a women that we have to multi-manage
Mm.
sometimes with so many things happening.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying I'm perfect. I do
No, no.
drop the ball and all that, but it's just like I think that we could do it if the environment allows us. And I think that's so important to have this very safe place. And obviously I knew you before, so when I was in that course, I knew like if I bring my daughter in, there would be no problem. I don't feel like I'd be discriminated in any way. So yeah.
I was grateful that you brought her in. I was grateful to meet her. Thank you so much. Come on. This has been a wonderful series of interviews. I've gotten so much value out of it, and I hope the people who are listening to this get some value out of it as well. Your experience is so rich and complex and interesting, and I think that there's a lot that anyone can learn from just hearing your stories. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Anthony.